Have you seen somatic therapy everywhere advertised to you? And you're like, what is this and what can it actually help me with? Then this is the episode for you. Aurora Allen, a somatic practitioner, yogi, and one of my good friends is on the show today to break down what somatic therapy is and how we can work with our bodies and nervous systems to feel better and beat burnout. If you're new here, you're listening to the How We Get Thru podcast, a place for you to feel connected through deep and meaningful conversations with healers from all over the world. I'm your host, Jen, a licensed therapist and founder and CEO of the How We Get Thru app. And my mission is to bring you affordable and diverse therapy resources to help you get through the hard stuff, all in one place and at your own pace. Welcome to the How We Get Thru community. Hello, and welcome back to the How We Get Thru podcast, you guys. Today is a very special one. I have my dear friend, Aurora Allen, who is just a beautiful human being, a beautiful soul, but also a somatic practitioner, a yoga instructor, and a nervous system educator, and which we all need more of. So,
me too.
Aurora, yes, exactly. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. You are so good at this. I just love seeing you do your thing here, podcasting. It's beautiful. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Well, I appreciate it. Well, we were talking before, and I just love how, again, I think we can just slip into the depths and seeing each other and seeing the world and healing. And so I'm just like really, I'm like, you just feel like home in a lot of ways. And so I'm just like so excited to dive into it.
Yeah, me too. It's so good to be with you.
Okay, so we like to start every show off with a mental health myth, and we would love to know yours.
Yeah, absolutely. So working with the nervous system, I'm starting to see all kinds of things out in social media and the world about nervous system regulation. Like nervous system regulation is the end of it. Like it's like once we reach nervous system regulation, we've made it, and now we are going to live this peaceful and calm existence. And that is just not how it works, unfortunately. We were talking before about having the human experience. And the human experience in this body is to have a nervous system that is designed to help you survive all the things that you go through, right? And so to be peaceful and calm in circumstances that are threatening, you're not going to survive that. So ultimately, what I like to kind of consider and think of is in nervous system work, for me, and I think for a lot of my clients, the goal is to have a coherent nervous system, a nervous system that's able to flow with what it is presented with and not get stuck in an old trauma response just because it helped you back then doesn't mean it's going to help you now. And so there's all kinds of things that we talk about in nervous system work around that. But ultimately, the word coherence, it helps me remember what I'm doing here. Like when I'm actually touching into my body's experience, it's about finding coherence. So if my heart is racing, is my body experiencing something threatening? And if the answer to that is yes, then how do I shift my circumstances so that I can support a true, honest, authentic settling in my body?
Can you say that again? Damn, girl. Yes. I mean, I think I was just talking about this on another podcast, but these like snippets on social media are really great, but they keep us kind of stuck in this like weird mindset of like this 50-second, Instagram or TikTok is going to tell me how to regulate my nervous system. And then that's it, right? Like it doesn't become this complete story. And I think even the idea of like a lot of achievers out there is like, well, I'm just going to tackle this and then we're going to be done. And again, that takes us out of our human experience, which is why we are here.
Exactly. And I think that culturally we are raised to have a goal and then achieve it, and then set another goal and achieve it. And it's this linear progress. And I mean, what we know about the therapeutic process is that it's anything but linear.
Right. Exactly. So what I love about what you're saying is shifting that perspective around our nervous system is that it's not linear. It's not yes or no. It's not black and white. but that coherent, that flow, and how do we work with our nervous system versus against it?
Yes, exactly. And also to recognize the spaces that our bodies are stuck, because we hold on to patterns unconsciously. Our body holds on to patterns in order to keep us safe. And it's up to us as adults to be able to touch into our body's experience. And if our body is saying, we're not safe, we're not safe, we're not safe, to be in relationship to our body and be able to teach it that actually you are safe now. Let's look around and orient to the room that we're in, because this is my bedroom and there's actually things that I have resourced myself with here. And it is possible for me to feel safe. And so let me slow down with my right now experience and notice that I'm okay, and find evidence of that, and then wait for my nervous system to actually get on board with that.
Yeah.
Which takes time. And we like to go fast.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think even speaking to the stuckness feeling, I think there could be a lot of like panic and like compound thoughts and emotions when we feel like our body or our nervous system getting more intense or feeling more like dialing up or whatever. And so that stuckness feeling, can you kind of speak more to that? Because I think sometimes even people have the mindset of like, well, it just keeps happening. Like it's just gonna, or I'm always going to be here, or whatever it is.
Absolutely. Well, like you named that, like ramping up, I like to use for myself the word activation. Right. And so if we kind of break it down in very, very simple terms, and our nervous systems are not simple, they're not simple by design, but just to kind of break it down in simple terms so we can talk about it, our autonomic nervous system, or kind of the automatic processes that are happening behind the scenes that we can't control, but we can influence. I'll maybe talk a little bit about that later. But it's broken up into two branches, the parasympathetic branch and the sympathetic branch. And we're either in kind of swinging between one and then the other. And we kind of, hopefully with a coherent system, we're flowing between both states. And our bodies are naturally doing that without too much effort on our part. But when we have held trauma in our body, then there are these stuck spaces where we'll get activated, then we'll stay activated, because the body is trying to keep you hypervigilant to make sure that you are prepared for the next thing that's going to come. Some of us have had, lived lives where the next thing has always been coming, right? And so making sure that you're able to create a container of safety for yourself to do this work is like number one most important part of nervous system, shifting the nervous system states and being able to heal a nervous system that's been traumatized. And that takes time also when there historically hasn't been a lot of safety. But going back to this idea of activation, that's when your sympathetic nervous system response is on. I think a lot of us in this day and age, because of the amount of information that we're processing all the time, the amount of news that we're getting, all the hard things that we are experiencing all the time, I think a lot of us are living in a place of activation, overactivation, and then it gets really hard to settle. And then when we do settle, it's like, oh, it's not safe to settle. The next thing's going to come. And so I think a lot of us are living in overactivation. And then what we see on a physiological level is long periods of time where our bodies are activated without the experience of settling is going to create symptoms of chronic illness, chronic pain syndromes, things like that, because all the neurochemicals and hormones in our body that are helping us fight or flee a dangerous scenario are just on all the time, and they weren't designed to do that. So I think that that's part of it. And so there are different entry points or portals of entry to access our body in order to find a space that feels like safety.
Yeah. Oh, so much good stuff there. When you're talking about the chronic pain and all of that, I just kept thinking of burnout. And I think burnout's been on the radar for plenty of years, but I think especially since 2020. And I, when you talk about that on that level, it's like this sustainability, you fizzle out, but you're like, but is everything okay in my life, or everything's fine? Or you try to like convince yourself that you're the problem, right?
Yeah.
Or your body's betraying you, or your whatever it is, right? We almost like gaslight ourselves, but our body is like cueing us in and inviting us in.
I love the word gaslighting for this because it's not the body that's betraying us. I think maybe it's the mind.
Oof.
And yet we put the mind, the thinking processes on a pedestal. And we live in a society that really values intelligence and learning and goal setting and achievement and all these things that
masculine,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when I'm speaking with clients at the beginning of our work together, and trying to educate them around kind of like where all this comes from, right? It's not your fault. It's like some of it is just the way that we've been conditioned to work. It's almost like our whole society is living what I like to call front heavy, where like our prefrontal cortex, like we've built it up like this like massive like resource and muscle. And we're like living like this, and there's no muscle, there's no connection back here to the hindbrain that is really, that's our closest connection to our body's experience, is all the hindbrain processes, which are connected to our survival, right? And we've just kind of like split ourselves, and we're like living front heavy with our forehead dropping down. And it's like, it's not that we want to cut that off. Like there is a lot of good that comes from our intelligent nature. And yet what could we do to maybe just like build a little muscle in the back, so then we end up lifting our head back up and using all of our brain, and then that coherence again, right? Like, we are
the balance.
We're all of it.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Yeah, the balance of it all, the integration of whole, right? Not just this cutting off of one thing or valuing one thing or utilizing one thing. Again, that human experience, we forget how vast we are, how like intricate we are.
Yes. One of my very favorite exercises, or not even exercises, but just questions that I'll ask at certain moments of a session, as I'm tracking someone's nervous system, if they're going through something and there's just a lot happening in the center of their body. One of the questions that I'll ask is, can you just notice that you have arms and hands? And it's just this like expanding the view outside of like when we're activated or triggered, it's likely that there's a lot happening in the center of the body. The visceral response of fight or flight, it happens really like central. And when we can just sit back and expand the awareness of like, oh yeah, I'm more than just this ache in my stomach. I'm more than just my heart pounding. I'm also like, I also have arms and legs, and I can wiggle my toes, and like, oh, that's right. Like I'm more expansive than just this one thing.
Yeah. Even I think that sense of relief of there's like a neutral sensation in your body, right? Like, because I think sometimes when we have pain or we have that like experience, we're like, okay, well, this is it. And that's the only thing I can concentrate in. Like, and I think that's part of survival. Like, hey, like attend to this, right?
Yeah.
But when you talk about the safety container, like that's a part of that is like, this can happen while something else neutral can be happening in your body as well.
Yes.
And what does that mean for you? What would feel safe about that for you?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's really important to specify that when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about doing work with someone who is feeling triggered, meaning their body is responding like something old is happening again, right?
Yeah.
And so in that moment, it's the expanded awareness bringing you to the present moment that might support a shift of the nervous system. Whereas if you're having in the moment, whether it's like you've been injured and there's physical pain that's happening because there really has been like an injury or a threat in the moment, that's not necessarily a time to be like, oh, let's expand our awareness here. No, like your body is saying something for a reason, right? So I think that's a really important remembering it.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that distinction. But again, that takes like, I mean, obviously, if you're hurt or something, you need to attend to. But I think sometimes the mind or mindset or whatever, it can feel like, oh, maybe this is happening in the moment. And so
yes,
there is a distinction, but also is there broadening around that self-awareness or that curiosity around the sensation to kind of like, do I need to bring myself to the present moment or do I need to tend to something?
Absolutely. I think that that is the most magical word in all of somatic work is curiosity. And if you're not able to be curious about your experience, then there really is an alarm bell going on. And where is that coming from? And it's also, I think, why it's important to name that this work isn't done alone. This work is done with reflection of safe other people. Safe and educated and people who can come alongside and hold space for your experience when your container isn't big enough for it.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful point. And speaking from my own experience, also with you, I've worked with you and we've worked with clients in tandem. And like, it's just been, I'm like, go see Aurora. I got your mind, but you go see Aurora for your body because she got to unlock some stuff. And get you grounded. But I mean, even working with you and with some other people, the fear when I'm in that pain or in that physical response can trip me up so much.
Okay.
Like, am I going to die? Or is this, you know, there's not even like room to ground when it's to my most recent experience where it was really intense. I was just like, am I going to die? And I knew it wasn't physical. I knew it was psychosomatic. I knew that, but I was also so scared in that experience. And so to have someone ground and hold, I wouldn't be able to get out of that without that space.
Absolutely. Same. And I've had experiences where the emotions are so big that it feels like the emotion is going to take me down. And it's like, how can you die from feeling too much, right? Like my mind is trying really hard to help me like recognize like you can't die from sadness, but that those emotional states can be so big too, that it triggers this survival response in the body. And then you're like doing everything you can to work mind, body, heart, emotional body. But it really is that other body being able to hold space for your experience until, when you have that container around you with somebody else holding you, that I think is when your container is like, oh, because I've had this experience now where I've been held, now I know what that's like. And so now I can grow to be that big for me.
Yes. And I think about both of us as healers, somebody has always held the space for us that then we become a healer. And it doesn't mean everyone's going to be a healer, but I think it just calls to that beautiful, like divine connection of healing with others, in the energy of others, in the safety of others, in the fear and the vulnerability of others, in creating that. And again, not gaslighting ourselves that, oh, I have to do it on my own, or I'm crazy, or this isn't a real thing, or just the fear of like being vulnerable, right? Can we all kind of be brave to take that next step if you've been thinking about something or been wanting to check out somatic therapy or go to therapy or these other things, can we invite ourselves into that? And that's scary. It's a scary step, but it also is the most rewarding.
Absolutely. Well, we were designed for connection.
Yeah.
Right? One of my very favorite things to remember, and this is something I heard in my training a long time ago, and I use it all the time, is these bodies were designed for connection and protection.
Ooh.
But the deepest layer, right? So our bodies are going to do both. And if there isn't connection happening, then how are we ever going to heal?
Yeah.
And so a step towards finding that connection with a safe other is a really important part, whether that's a therapist or a coach or a trusted doctor or body worker or somebody where your body can start to soften into connection, especially if it hasn't had a lot of experiences of that before.
Oh, I love that. I am going like a little bit in two directions here as you're talking. I think Aurora has 4 children.
It's a lot of children.
Being 1.5, 2, 1.5?
She's 2, yeah.
2. And your oldest is?
10.
10. Yes. But I think about the like connection and protection in motherhood in that, and I think for kids too, that we are built to be in connection and protect each other like in these little tribes, and we've isolated ourselves in so many ways. And even I read this study, or somebody told me about this study the other day, kids, like teens, are feeling the most heard from their parents and most connected, and also experiencing the most like depression and anxiety. And I think that might come, I'm just hypothesizing right now, just go with me, from that there's that connection, but there is also not that, the social media piece has really disconnected all of us, or like this false reality of that we are connected. And so again, like, following people on Instagram is great. They have a lot of good things, but the depth work, if you're like calling yourself into this depth work, like it is like being with these healers. It's being with other people. It's so physical. It's so energetic. And I think we can get kind of sucked in of like, well, I'm just going to do this thing that's not really the work, and it's not with people.
Yes.
We need it more than ever, is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And to work with a therapist or a healer is just one step. I think that one of the things that we're really missing, and this is going a little bit,
Love it. Let's go.
It's just expanding, and because it's all connected. But I really believe that we are missing community. We really are missing community, and we're trying to create it in virtual spaces. And I think that's beautiful. And I love that we've come to that, right? And those virtual spaces can absolutely support some of that. But there's nothing like sitting in a room full of other people that are going through a similar experience, or who know something about something you're going through. So whether it's like a mother circle, or it's like a yoga class in person, or it's like even just like a cookie party at Christmas with your neighbors. Like, we've been missing that. And I think the pandemic really took us to the next layer of being that isolated, like you named before, and returning to community gatherings, I think, is really, really vital for our mental health. And our bodies naturally settle into being held by others. And I think we've just gotten so far away from that it's going to take a while for our bodies to get back to that as we begin to gather. But I really encourage people to find spaces they can gather with other bodies.
Yeah. The co-regulation aspect of all of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love it. When did you start your somatic journey? I think you did yoga before, right? And your husband's a chiropractor.
Yeah. I have such a weird journey to this seat that I'm sitting in right now.
Girl, it's right on time. It's right on time. It's exactly what you needed. It's perfect.
Yeah, it really is. And it's just amazing how my life experience, I can look back and see how it does fit now.
Yeah.
And for so many years, I felt so lost. Like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I remember when I used to go to church, like praying, like, God, like, what are you wanting of me? Like, I don't understand where this life is leading me, and being so frustrated. And now that I sit here in this moment, I'm going, oh, I wasn't supposed to know. And it all makes sense now. And I can use this moment in time to remember that it all does lead you where you're supposed to be, as cheesy as that sounds. But yes, I started my journey actually in psychology. So I totally thought I was going to be a clinical psychologist. That was my plan, my road. I have my master's in research because I wanted to have enough research experience to get into the best clinical program. But when I was in my research program, I met my husband and my priority shifted. I didn't want to go and spend the next 4 to 6 years of my life in school anymore. I was really yearning to have a family. And so I ended up shifting, my focus to family life. And I was in behavioral therapy at the time. I was a BCBA, board certified behavior analyst, working with kids with autism and other developmental disabilities. And I shifted my focus, and I ended up supporting my husband starting his first chiropractic office. And I worked in the office, and I saw the body healing that would happen there. And I was like super fascinated. And I was like, well, how can I help people's bodies and still be a mom? And like, how am I going to fit all these pieces? So then I dove into yoga teacher training, because yoga and chiropractic really are complementary of each other. I was like, well, maybe we can work together. And through the journey of and kind of like, I call it like the rabbit hole of learning that I did in that space, it led me to nervous system regulation through my own lived experience of actually feeling my body settle for the first time in my life through my own yoga practice. And so I was like, well, why is yoga the first place I've ever felt this? Like, what is it about yoga? And so I would go to training after training after training with all these different amazing yoga teachers, world renowned, and where it led me was to the nervous system, and how the nervous system responds to the postures, the breath work, the mind settling, the meditation, the focus, all of that. And I was invited into what is called somatic experiencing from one of those trainings, specifically on fascia and connective tissue. And I started looking into Dr. Peter Levine's work, and I was just hooked. And then I did the somatic experiencing practitioner certification. And that's currently what I do now, mostly with people. I also do still teach yoga classes in my community. I moved. I did a big move with my family, which was really, really hard. And one of the most beautiful resources I've found in my new community is teaching yoga at the local gym. And it is just the most amazing group of people. I look forward to it every week. I get so sad when one of my kids is sick and I have to ask for a step, because it's just such a great ground wire of real people. So I do see clients and I work again primarily with somatic experiencing techniques in order to support that healing of the nervous system. But then I teach yoga classes and meditation, and that's where I am now. And it's just wild. Like, the journey has been really wild. So that was a long-winded way to answer your question.
But I love the I think sometimes when we think about purpose, it's like, what's this one thing that I'm going to do? And it's this one external thing. And I think it's more of solidifying, who am and then the things that come out of that can be multifaceted, can be in so many different ways and so many modalities and avenues. And this will continue to shift and grow for you as it does for all of us. But like, there's this integration that I think you finally felt, which can feel so like, oh, this is it. Like healer, connector.
That is 100% the most beautiful thing that you just said around it's about finding out who am I rather than what am I going to do. And one of my yogi friends that I'm in community with here was saying, you know, I really think that everybody, instead of going to college, everyone should go to yoga teacher training, find out who they are, and then decide what college they want to go to. I was like, yes.
Yes, again, that prefrontal lobe, right? We're so like, what am I going to be versus who am I? Like heart-centered, right?
Again.
And again, we talked about like the divine feminine healing and all this stuff. And I think it's true. And I think that's part of the body work is the feminine energy, which we have both male and feminine energy. Everybody does. And I think women have been a little bit cut off or forced in masculine energy to do, to produce, to be all the things. And part of that is our body.
Absolutely. And I actually was just starting to write a blog post on this about how, to me, from, you know, my worldview, I see things being so overly masculine in our current society, and how our bodies are in that. And so to me, what is starting to connect, and you know, this may or may not be the case, but the way that I see it is our activation response, our sympathetic drive is our masculine. And our parasympathetic response, our nurturing and our rest and recovery and our moon and our, you know, is our feminine. And we need both, right?
Yes.
Just because we might be over sympathetic or hold too much masculine doesn't mean that that's bad or wrong. We need to be able to get up and go. We need to get off the couch and get things moving. And that's where our ideas come to life, right? Like masculine is great. We just need to learn how to live and sink into the feminine and allow that to help us balance the masculine energy. And so then to me, it's like this like difficulty in settling, this difficulty, like so many people, so many sleep disorders, so many people can't rest.
Yes. There's sleep gummies and all the things. There's a whole wellness industry around sleep and tracking sleep and all the things, right? And ironically, we have everything we need here to regulate our nervous system in order to get a good night's sleep.
Yes.
But I love that connection to masculine and feminine. And again, it's not against being men or against being masculine. It is the like noticing the offness of things and how do we bring in more feminine, more resting, more nurturing.
Yes. And in order to do that, we need to first know where we're at. We need to see ourselves in our patterns, in our imbalances. And I think that's really the first step, is learning how to track our own body and be honest with ourselves about what's happening in the moment.
This is a little bit of mindset that I think, again, we're stuck in this like heavy forward. I think for a lot of women specifically is that like, I can't, like the whole fair play, the invisible load of motherhood, the like women are burning out because they have to do so much around the household and now they have to work. I mean, like, do I need to work anywhere? No.
Yeah.
But I think we get stuck again in these kind of like ideas or thoughts of self and like mental prisons that like, well, I have to do all these things or things are going to fall apart, right? And which again is that very masculine point of view and way of thinking, is like, I need to keep providing, I need to keep building. But again, if we're not softening and taking care of ourselves and nurturing and resting, we can't sustain that. So it's not even like not doing anything. It's more of like, again, that bringing in, how do I add in more rest?
Yes.
More resting time, more resting periods, breaths, breathing.
Well, also just the reality of what you just said is, if I don't stop doing, everything's going to fall apart. It's going to fall apart anyways. Because the body, and the body as kind of the metaphor for that is, your body will only go so long in sympathetic activation. The burnout happens, and what happens in your nervous system is it's on high alert for so long that it will say no more, and you will collapse into a shutdown, conserve mode, and typically that looks like depression.
Yeah. Oof.
And we can't get off the couch, and we can't get motivated to do anything, and we're stuck. And that the body side of that is that we've pushed so hard for so long, the body started to say no more. You can't survive and keep doing that. So knowing that at some part things are going to fall apart anyways if you don't start to make changes and start to honor the rhythms of, let's just in for this podcast of your body.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Which again, I think goes back to, I don't know where society, everything comes forth, but the self-sacrifice of a woman, of a mother, is to not tend to your body, to not tend to your needs because of the laundry list of things that you need to do. It's that belief, it's that perspective that I think we're being fed or hold on to so tightly, when in reality, everything comes falling down if we don't take care of ourselves.
Yeah,
if
we were never supposed to do motherhood this way. This is a modern culture thing. Okay, because you have to remember in cultures, long before our current system, women were well taken care of. When they had a baby, all the women in the community would come in and support that mother. And we didn't mother alone. We absolutely need one another. And we don't know how to do that in our modern time. And I can't tell you, I have this amazing friend and neighbor. I hope she listens to this.
What's her name?
Her name's Shannon. And she changed my life. Because I've never had a neighbor, let alone a friend, come alongside me so generously and authentically as she has. And for a while, I had just met her when I moved here, and she was so kind. And I was like, oh, the people in Texas are so nice. And it was this just consistent showing up. And the other day, I was at my house with one of my kids was sick and the other three were not. And the kids had been home because it was freezing in Texas and the roads were icy. And so school was canceled, and it's just been a long few days. And she came over and said, can I just take the other kids to my house for a little bit and just let them play with my kids?
My God.
And it was the biggest gift to my life. And she's teaching me now about what it's like to live in community and to have a reciprocal giving, receiving relationship. She is embodying the divine feminine for me. And to witness it in real time, in real life, has been such a massive gift to me. Oh, it makes me want to cry.
Same.
Right?
Yes.
And I think that's what we need. I think that's what our nervous systems need. I think that's what our children need to witness.
Yeah. Wow. And I think the emotional response in both of us, it's like this most beautiful, and I think for me, like it's a yearning thing. That's why it resonates so much, is like, oh.
The most interesting and strangest thing to me, when she initially had come and, had texted me to come pick up my kids, or asked me, I'm driving by your house, can I come pick up your kids? Is my initial response was like, I don't know, that makes me kind of uncomfortable. What if oh, and then I'm gonna need to do that for her. And all these thoughts and feelings were happening. My anxious mind was telling me a story and trying to get me to not engage. And it actually, I had to sit and be present with myself in order to question my anxiety so that I could look around, orient myself to what was happening and say yes.
Yeah.
And then when I did, it was the biggest gift to my life. And we have to be, and that's the feminine energy, is the willingness to receive.
Yes. Oof.
That's my
so
neighbor and dear friend.
Shannon.
Girl.
Shannon, sweet angel.
She is.
God.
Everyone needs a Shannon.
Yes, everyone needs a Shannon. But I think, again, that beautiful notion of receiving, we are like, what does that mean? How do we do that? And it is, and I think it's receiving freely because I think I feel the same way, like, oh, I'm going to have to do this for her, right? Like I have to do these things, but I feel so tapped out. And I think even just the receiving giving is like, you might be giving something different than what she's giving you, right? Like, or can you give her emotional space? Can you give her co-regulation? Can you give her something else that isn't child rearing? Do you know what I mean? But I think we feel like, oh, now I have to do that for her.
Yes.
But I think we have different capacities and different limits, and how do we honor those things? And being in community is like, I will receive this from you and I will gift you something that I know how to give.
Yes, I love that so much because that goes back to the whole idea that you know yourself, right? And you really understand who you are. And when I know who I am and where I'm at in this moment, then I know what I am giving. And I am, aware that, I am living in my gifting.
Yes, that clarity, that purpose, like coming back to that and grounding in that and not trying to be something or what you think she wants you to be.
Yes.
Ugh, that's so beautiful.
It really is.
Oh my gosh. So let's go to communes, everybody. Let's start building those up.
Yes. I am in.
I know. Well, your land is big enough. I don't know if it is.
Well, not really.
I know.
And there's a lot of HOA restrictions. So.
What? Oh my gosh.
I know.
Okay. Aurora, this has been so wonderful. As we wrap up, I would just love if you can just walk us through, like, what does a typical session look like? Because I know even I talked to some of my clients, I'm like, go see Aurora. I think body work for a lot of women, like, kind of like frees up and like it's another thing to do, or it's like, I don't know if I can do that. So walk us through what a session would look like.
Yeah. One thing I love about nervous system work and somatic experiencing is it's so fluid and it really meets you right where you're at. So my sessions can look very different from client to client. And that's what I love so much about it. It's really fun in that way. And it's always interesting and it always keeps me really present. And I appreciate that so much about the nature of this work. But when we begin this kind of work, if this is like the first time you've ever stepped into any kind of somatic work, one of the first things that we do is we learn how to track our sensory experience. That's a really big part of being able to connect with your body, is to learn the language of the sensation that your body is already speaking. It's already speaking it. Whether you're listening or not, it's happening.
Yeah.
So that would be a starting point. And then from there, it's very dependent on what the nervous system is needing in the moment. And sometimes it looks like movement. Sometimes it looks like breath work. Sometimes it looks like just sitting and creating space, literally just sitting and creating space for the body to speak and kind of just waiting on that. I'm like, so it can be really different. But there's always things I think that we're learning all the time. Because the beauty about the body, I love this about the body. It also is what's like so hard and terrifying about it is the body is different in every single moment.
Oh,
it is new.
Wow.
Just because your body, responded one way last week does not mean that that's going to happen here and now. And so it really is this practice of presence. And to me, that is the only place life can be lived, right? We talk about anxiety and depression and all these things, and they are all outside of this moment.
Yeah.
In this moment, if it's an anxious moment, what can we get clear about? Well, we can get clear about how the body is experiencing anxiety. My heart is pounding out of my chest. I feel like my jaw is clenching. I feel like my mind will not stop. It is just ping-ponging all over the place. And when we can notice and track those things, then we can get curious about, okay, what are those signals telling me? And through the work of having another person ask questions and help you remain curious about that is when you can start to get clear about your own patterning, so that when you're clear about your patterns, you can learn how to shift those patterns by utilizing different body-based tools and techniques and practices. And what I love about that is like, there are going to be things that fit like a glove. And there are going to be things that are like, I tried that and that was so not for me.
Yeah.
And all of that information is super valuable because you can try it on in the next moment that your body is different, and in the next moment that your body is different.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And how would somebody know that they would need to do somatic work? Like what typically brings people in?
A lot of times it's anxiousness, anxiety, or syndromes or symptoms that they haven't been able to find like a medical answer for.
Yeah.
Right. So I get a lot of that too, which is totally understandable. And I think really common in this type of work. But I think we can all benefit. Every single person can benefit because we are living in such a strong, masculine, patriarchal society. I think we can all benefit from touching into our body's experience more often, just as a whole, like as a collective.
Yeah. And again, it's almost like receiving what your body's telling you, like in a feminine way. Like, how do I receive what my body's telling me instead of trying to like siphon it off or cut it off? I think it's, again, the idea that we can access different points into healing, and body can be a really powerful one. So if you feel stuck in therapy, or if you feel stuck in your head, like sometimes just accessing it in a different way can start to really free up things that you never thought were possible.
Exactly. A lot of the clients that I see have been in like therapy for 4 or 5 years.
Yep.
And it's been great. And there's been a lot of learning, and there's just the growth has kind of slowed.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Aurora. So you originally were from California. Now you're in Texas.
I am.
How can people work with you? Where do we find you? Tell us all.
Yeah, I work with people remotely right now. So for somatic experiencing sessions, I do 50-minute sessions. So it's like a therapy session, but it's not.
Yeah.
And it's all virtual right now. One day I might have a little office space, but that's not in the mix quite yet. But what I love about that is I really can see people all over the world. I mean, I've seen people in other countries, and that's just so beautiful that we can connect this way. And that is one wonderful thing about technology. But one of my newer adventures is working with Insight Timer, which is an app that I have been using for years, and I've been recommending for years. It's a free app for mostly meditation. And so I have been creating somatic-based meditations to help support people kind of remotely, and people that may not be ready for doing one-on-one work, or they're just curious and they want to kind of try some stuff on their own before they start the connection of doing the work with somebody else. And so I've just started writing those. I have my first one was just released this last week. I think it's a great one.
Yeah.
I did it the other morning and I was like, yeah, this feels good.
Yeah.
And then I'm also offering free monthly yoga classes. And in these yoga classes, they're going to be on Sundays, sacred Sundays. And it really is going to be a all levels yoga class. It'll be a blend of hatha and flow, and I'll always offer modifications for those who are newer to the practice. But the way that I'll teach it is also going to kind of infuse some somatic experiencing practices, some breath work. And so it's going to be a somatic session and an opportunity to just connect with your body. But then, we might kind of feel like, okay, we got a little community happening once a month. So my first one is going to be this Sunday.
Awesome. And that's virtual.
It's virtual. It's on the timer, the Insight Timer app.
Oh, on Insight Timer. Oh,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So then you don't have to have there's no camera on you, right? You can just watch you on the app?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Which I think is a really good place if you're thinking about somatic therapy, or or your therapist has told you should go do this. If any of my clients are listening, this I think is a really great way to start engaging with your body to just see what comes up. I was in a session the other day with a client. She was talking about anxiety and on her chest. And I was like, you just want to take a deep breath real quick, through your nose, out through your mouth. And she did. She started crying. And I said, yeah, right? This, can we engage with your body a little bit? What would that feel like? And that's scary too, right? But again, in that container space, it's like, there's so much tenderness here. There's so much beauty in this. And I know it's hard, but there's also release.
Yes.
Can happen.
Release and relief.
Yeah. Oof. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
There's this really beautiful song that reminded me. It literally is just the words ease, release, relief. And it's just those words. It's like a mantra song over and over again. It's by a beautiful chorus. Go listen to it. It's so pretty. I
love that. Is that on Instagram too? I think I saw. Oh, did you post that?
I probably did at some point.
Yeah. Just today, I think you by Beautiful Chorus, something.
Oh, that was another one. I love them.
I know.
It really helps me kind of tap into my body and just sit in, because it's just the mantras. It's just the kind of repetitive.
Beautiful. Yeah. I love that. Okay. What is your website called? What is your, what's your handles? How do people find you?
My website is just my name, auroraallen.com. Keep it simple.
Nice.
And my Instagram handle now is Aurora Allen Somatics. SOMATICS.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll have that in the show notes and the Insight Timer as well. We'll have those links for you guys.
Come join me all along.
Aurora, thank you so much. Let's do this again on a different subject.
Yes, absolutely.
We could just keep going.
We really could.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And we hope we can offer you more healing and light. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening to our show. We hope we've invited you into your own healing of your nervous system. And if you don't know where to start, check out Aurora's free meditations on the Insight Timer. And lastly, if you are loving what you're hearing, please give us a review up on Apple Podcasts so that we can continue to reach and help others. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.